Have you ever wondered why your neighbor, who seems to spend all day drinking tea on the porch, manages to harvest overflowing baskets of giant tomatoes, while you spend hours breaking your back among the clods only to get small fruits and sickly plants? Welcome to the world of smart gardening. Today we will talk about growing tomatoes in the open field, from planting to daily care. I promise you that by the end of this video, you will have learned a system to triple your production while cutting your physical labor in half, and we will start by debunking a belief that holds back many enthusiasts. Are you ready to discover that digging and hoeing the soil around tomatoes is actually the worst thing you can do for your harvest? Do yourself a favor, get comfortable, and listen carefully because we are going to change the rules of the game. And speaking of rules, write to me right now in the comments how many times a week you water your tomatoes. I bet most of you are doing it wrong. To understand how to get the most out of our tomatoes without going crazy, we first need to understand what they are and where they come from. The tomato is a plant native to South America, accustomed to warm climates and soils where it could creep freely like a wild vine, taking root wherever its stem touched the ground. It was a plant that fended for itself. We, for the convenience of space and harvesting, have forced it to grow vertically, tied to stakes, completely altering its original nature. Imagine taking a marathon runner used to running free in the prairies and forcing them to climb endless flights of stairs in a skyscraper. This is what we do to our tomatoes. For this reason, our task as lazy but smart gardeners is not to dominate the plant, but to recreate an environment that supports this new vertical structure of its, providing a strong root system and constant hydration without stressing it. Furthermore, let's start from the beginning, which is soil preparation. And here is the first big myth to debunk. Many believe that to plant tomatoes, it is necessary to turn the soil deeply, breaking your back with a spade. Nothing could be further from the truth. In our lazy approach, we do not disturb the deep structure of the soil. Think of the soil as an underground metropolis teeming with life, with highways created by earthworms and communication networks made of beneficial fungi. If you go over it with a tiller, you destroy the city. What you need to do is simply add a 2 to 4-inch, 5 to 10 centimeters layer of excellent compost on the surface a month before planting. The earthworms and the rain will carry the nutrients downward. Untilled soil retains moisture better and hosts much stronger roots. This is the first step to a garden that works for you, giving you soft and fertile soil without having lifted a single heavy clod. Let's now move on to the fateful moment of planting. The most common mistake I see in the spring is rushing. You see a ray of sunshine in April and run out to buy seedlings, but the tomato hates the night cold. Imagine getting out of bed in the middle of winter to dive into a freezing pool. This is the effect that cold soil has on tomato roots. The secret is to wait until the nighttime temperature never drops below 54 degrees Celsius in a 12 degrees Celsius. Planting 3 weeks later, in late May, in already warm soil, will make your plants grow twice as fast as those planted too early, which will remain stunted and suffering for weeks. Patience in this case will save you a lot of frustration and early diseases. Let the thermometer decide, not the calendar. When the time finally comes to plant, we use a trick that takes advantage of the tomato's ancient creeping nature. Do not make a deep little hole just big enough for the roots. Instead, dig a small horizontal trench as long as your seedling. Remove the lowest leaves of the tomato and lay it down in this trench, covering the entire stem with soil and leaving only the top tuft sticking out. The tomato has the magical ability to grow new roots from every millimeter of buried stem. This method will transform your plant, equipping it with a massive root system. Imagine anchoring a boat not with a small rope, but with a thick, deep steel chain. A plant with a buried stem will be able to absorb 3 times the water and nutrients, becoming a giant capable of supporting pounds of fruit without collapsing at the first strong wind. Now let's talk about the distance between plants. Another crucial factor for those who don't want to work hard later. Many tend to plant tomatoes too close together, thinking they are optimizing space and getting more fruit. It is a massive mistake. Planting tomatoes tightly is like locking dozens of people in a small elevator on a sweltering day. There is no air, people sweat, and diseases spread in an instant. Leave at least 24 inches, 60 centimeters between plants and 3 feet, 1 meter between rows. This space allows air to circulate freely, drying the leaves after the morning rain. Air is the best natural fungicide, and it is completely free. By giving the plants space, you will avoid having to run around every week with a backpack sprayer full of chemical treatments. More space means fewer diseases, larger fruits, and much less work for you. Once planted, tomatoes need a very precise watering strategy. Here is another false myth. The idea that the garden should be watered a little bit every day? Forget it. Watering superficially every evening makes the plants lazy. The roots will stay on the surface waiting for their daily ration and will become extremely vulnerable to the heat. The smart method is to literally flood the base of the newly planted seedling, giving it a couple of liters of water all at once and then stopping. Do not give it water for the next 5 to 7 days. This period of forced drought will push the plant to seek water deep down, developing long and strong roots. Imagine training an athlete. You have to push them out of their comfort zone to make them more resilient. A deep root system will guarantee you self-sufficient plants even in the hottest weeks of summer. We have arrived at the true secret of the lazy gardener. Mulching. If there is only one thing you take away from this video, let it be this. After planting and doing the first big watering, cover the entire soil around the tomatoes with a layer at least 4 inches, 10 centimeters thick of straw, hay, or dry grass clippings. Mulch acts as a thermal and protective blanket. It blocks the sun's rays, preventing weed seeds from germinating. And boom, you have just eliminated 100% of the time spent hoeing and pulling weeds. Furthermore, it retains moisture in the soil, reducing the need to water by more than half. It is like putting a lid on a pot of boiling water. Evaporation is blocked. With good mulching, your garden works by itself, and you can enjoy the summer resting in the shade. As for the initial fertilization, let's avoid spending a fortune on complex chemicals. The tomato is a hungry plant, but it likes to eat slowly. When you prepare the hole or trench we talked about earlier, add a couple of handfuls of pelleted manure, a tablespoon of wood ash for potassium, and some finely crushed eggshells. Eggshells are the secret trick. They release calcium slowly into the soil throughout the season. This small initial effort will act as a slow-release underground pantry. The plant will feed exactly when it needs to, without suffering those unnatural growth shocks caused by liquid chemical fertilizers. Imagine providing the plant with a complete and balanced, slow-release meal, rather than a sugar rush that fades quickly. At this point, our plants will start to grow fast, and it is time to talk about staking or how to support them. Many wait until the plant is tall and already bending before putting in the stake. A huge mistake. Inserting a wooden or bamboo stake when the roots are already extended means skewering and destroying the root system, causing enormous trauma to the plant. The stake must be placed at the exact same time you plant the tomato. Fix it firmly in the ground about 2 inches, 5 centimeters from the main stem. This way, the plant will grow recognizing the stake as its ally, and you will have a solid structure ready for when the fruits become heavy. Choose stakes that are at least 6.5 feet, 2 meters tall, because if you follow my advice, your tomatoes will reach heights you have never seen before. But how do you properly tie a tomato to its stake? It seems trivial, but I constantly see plants strangled by plastic ties that are too tight. The tomato stem grows and thickens over time. If you tie it tightly, the sap will no longer be able to circulate, as if you put a tourniquet on an arm. The right method is to create a soft figure-8 knot. First, tie the string firmly around the stake, then cross it to form an 8 and pass a wide loop around the tomato stem. The plant must be able to move with the wind. This strengthens it, and it must have the space to thicken its stem without constriction. Tie the plant every 8 to 12 inches, 20 to 30 centimeters as it grows. Imagine having to guide a child by the hand. You hold them gently so they don't fall, but you don't crush their wrist. We now come to one of the most debated topics among vegetable gardeners: suckering or the pruning of axillary shoots. Those small branches that sprout exactly in the intersection between the main stem and a leaf. Think of these shoots as energy vampires. If left to grow, each shoot will become a new main stem, producing leaves and flowers. Sounds great, right? But in reality, the plant will waste its energy trying to keep a messy jungle of leaves alive, taking nourishment away from the fruits. By removing these side shoots when they are still small, simply snapping them off with your fingers, we concentrate all the plant's energy upward and toward the clusters of tomatoes. You will have fewer tomatoes in absolute numbers, but they will be huge, juicy, and will ripen much earlier, precisely because the plant is not wasting unnecessary energy. However, there is a vital exception to the pruning rule that you absolutely must know, otherwise you risk ruining the entire harvest. Not all tomatoes should be suckered. Tomatoes are divided into two main categories: indeterminate growth and determinate growth. Indeterminate ones, like classic slicing tomatoes or beefsteaks, grow endlessly and must be pruned regularly. But determinate varieties, like sauce tomatoes or bush cherry tomatoes, have a preset maximum height in their genetic code. They produce all their fruit almost simultaneously and then stop. If you remove the side shoots from a determinate tomato, you are literally snapping off the branches that are supposed to give you fruit, drastically reducing your harvest. Always read the seedlings label. The true lazy gardener, by the way, loves determinate tomatoes because they grow as a bush and often require neither tying nor pruning. We are in the heart of summer. The plants are tall, full of flowers, and the first little green fruits are swelling. This is the moment when the plant needs an energy boost to bring dozens of tomatoes to maturity at the same time. But beware, no granular chemical fertilizers thrown randomly on dry soil. They would burn the roots. The perfect method is to use a natural liquid fertilizer, such as nettle tea or compost tea. This acts like a fast-absorbing sports supplement. Dilute it in water and water at the base of the plant every 2 or 3 weeks during the period of maximum effort. You will see the tomatoes swell visibly. The plant has spent all the energy stored from the soil at the beginning of the season. Now it is up to you to offer it this sweet, refreshing snack to help it complete its hard work. And right during these scorching summer weeks, your watering strategy becomes your secret weapon. Forget once again the evening watering can to wet a little soil. If you have done a good job with mulching, the soil underneath will be moist. Now you must water very abundantly but rarely. Provide 1.5 to 2.5 gallons, 5 to 10 liters, of water per plant, poured slowly at the base, not on the leaves, only once or twice a week depending on the heat. This targeted flooding ensures that the water reaches deep down, right where the giant roots we developed at the beginning are located. Superficial watering in midsummer evaporates before reaching the useful roots, leaving the plant thirsty despite your efforts. Remember, water heavily, water infrequently, water only the base. As the lower tomatoes begin to swell and change color, it is time for a magical operation called leaf pruning. The lowest branches and leaves of the plant, those in contact with the ground or close to it, have done their job and are now aging. They start to yellow and become the perfect highway for fungi and bacteria to enter from the damp soil. Equip yourself with disinfected shears and mercilessly cut away all the leafy branches from the ground up to the first cluster of tomatoes. This cut lifts the plant's canopy off the ground, as if you were lifting its skirt so it doesn't touch the mud. It also creates a tunnel of fresh air that ventilates the base, reducing stagnant humidity. This simple gesture, done once or twice in the summer, drastically prevents the onset of fungal diseases that could decimate the garden in a few days. Let's talk about the number one enemy of many gardeners, that annoying flat black spot that appears on the bottom of tomatoes, causing them to rot before they even ripen. It is called blossom end rot, and almost everyone falls for it here. They think it is a disease and run out to buy useless poisons. In reality, it is a calcium deficiency, but the real surprise is that calcium is almost always present in the soil. The problem is that the plant cannot drink it due to irregular watering. If you go from periods of extreme drought to violent flooding, the flow of sap is interrupted and the calcium does not reach the tip of the fruit, causing necrosis. Our lazy approach with deep mulching and infrequent but abundant watering keeps the soil moisture constant, allowing the calcium to travel undisturbed. Preventing black rot is not done by buying magic products. It is done by regulating the plant's drinking. To protect our beloved tomatoes from pesky insects like aphids and nematodes, nature offers us incredible bodyguards, and all we have to do is hire them. The concept is companion planting. Instead of planting only tomatoes, sow fragrant basil and flowers called marigolds at their base. The strong smell of basil confuses the sense of smell of pests looking for tomatoes, masking their presence, and even enhances the flavor of nearby fruits. Marigolds with their roots secrete substances into the soil that repel nematodes, microscopic worms that destroy tomato roots. Imagine creating a biological security system. You don't have to do anything, spray anything. It is the plants themselves that collaborate, protect each other, and make your garden colorful, fragrant, and incredibly efficient. The real sword of Damocles for those who grow tomatoes outdoors is the dreaded late blight, a fungus that can turn all the plants black and destroy them in 3 days of humid rain. The secret to fighting it is not to battle it after it has appeared, but to never let it settle in. This fungus needs stagnant water on the leaves to germinate, so the first absolute rule is to never, for any reason, wet the leaves when you water. Never. And then light prevention comes into play. If the forecast calls for days of persistent summer rain, spray a light veil of Bordeaux mixture, a copper-based product allowed in organic farming, on the leaves. The copper creates a protective shield that prevents the fungus from attaching. A preventive intervention saves you from weeks of desperate battles. Work first to rest later. This is the way of the stress-free garden. In midsummer, when the sun beats down mercilessly, we might run into another paradoxical problem. Tomatoes, which love the sun, can literally get sunburned if exposed directly to the scorching rays all day long, forming white, spongy spots on the fruit. It is called sun scald. That is why when you do the leaf pruning we talked about earlier, you must remove the lower leaves to promote airflow, but you must leave a nice, thick canopy at the top of the plant. The top leaves serve as a natural umbrella to protect the delicate clusters below from the direct rays of the midday sun. Do not completely strip your plants bare, hoping to get sun on the fruits. The tomato ripens thanks to ambient heat and the ethylene produced by the plant. It does not need to get a tanning bed session. Use the leaves as a smart sunshade. Towards the end of August, summer begins to wind down, and we must send a clear signal to our plants. If we let them be, indeterminate growth plants will continue to produce new flowers and branches at the top, trying to climb to the sky. But these new flowers will never have time to become ripe tomatoes before the autumn cold arrives. It would just be a huge waste of energy. This is where an action called topping comes into play. Take a pair of scissors and cut the main tip of the plant, permanently stopping its upward growth. Also remove the very last newly formed flowers. It is like telling the plant that the party is over and that it must use its last reserves of energy to swell and ripen the tomatoes that are already present on the branches. This way, you will have an abundant and fast final harvest without little green fruits that will rot in the cold. And finally, the most anticipated moment, the harvest. I bet you are used to leaving tomatoes on the plant until they become deep red and soft to the touch. Well, there is a master trick for this too. The tomato should be detached from the plant as soon as it begins to change color and shows the first shades of red or orange, a phase known in jargon as the breaker stage. At that precise moment, the tomato has already stored all the nutrients and sugars it needs from the plant. You can pick it and let it ripen indoors, perhaps next to some apples in a basket. The flavor will be identical, but you will have gained 3 enormous advantages. First, the fruits will not be eaten by birds or stink bugs right at the best moment. Second, they will not split if it suddenly rains. Third, you will relieve the plant of the weight, pushing it to ripen the remaining fruits on the upper levels much faster. Here we are at the moment of truth. We have seen how to avoid the fatigue of hoeing, how mulching becomes our best ally, and how to water smartly. But the real secret, the turning point that changes everything, is that the garden does not need muscles. It needs strategy. By stopping the fight against the plant's nature and accommodating its need for deep roots, air, and space, you will get results that seem like pure magic. The smart work done in April and May, preparing the soil without turning it and mulching carefully, will literally give you hundreds of free hours in the following months. No weeds, watering reduced to a minimum, and plants capable of resisting diseases and drought on their own. It is a total liberation. Now you can enjoy your fragrant salads with pride and without backaches. If this revolutionary approach has changed the way you see the secrets of the garden, subscribe to the channel and leave a like. We are bringing to light the wisdom of the earth that many have tried to forget. Cultivate your future. The next garden treasure will be revealed very soon.